Hi everyone. So let's go ahead and start our new chapter, which is chapter 24, looking at the urinary system. And the book starts out by comparing the urinary system to a water treatment plant. And the reason why it does that is it talks about how the urinary system is really good at eliminating unwanted substances from the body. So let's talk about some of these unwanted substances or waste products. So there's lots of waste products produced from all of the cells in the body, and they are going to end up in the blood. One of them we talked about in the last chapter, and that was carbon dioxide. We know how we get rid of carbon dioxide, not through urine, it is through exhaling. We have to talk about how we get rid of all of these other waste products like ammonia, urea, uric acid, and substances like that. What happens is they're filtered from the blood by the kidneys, and then the kidneys are going to form urine, and we get rid of urine through the urinary tract, which we'll look at here in a second. So if we take a look at the urinary system as far as structures, it's very, very simple. Kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. The book, and understandably so, because most of what's happening in the urinary system is going to happen here in the kidneys. So the book spends about 3/4 of the chapter focusing on the kidneys, as it should. So we'll talk about here in a second the just kind of general functions of these structures and why there's so much focus on the kidneys. So what we'll do first here in the first section, section 1, which is the introduction to the urinary system, is we'll reintroduce those structures I just talked about, but we'll look at them on a picture and just have a general description of them. And then we're going to talk about some of the main functions of the kidneys. So let's take a look at them. Here they are. And there's the components that we already looked at. So here are the kidneys. So everyone should be familiar with these. We talked about the adrenal glands and how the adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. So there they are. The kidneys are going to be the ones responsible for filtering blood. And again, that's what the book really focuses on. It filters blood, it removes waste products, and then eventually it forms urine. So from there, it is going to send the urine down the ureters. So here's the ureters, these long tubes that transport urine from the kidneys to the bladder. And then here's the other one. You have a right and left. There they are, right there. And let me get a different color for my other one. What other colors do I have? Ooh, let's do green. And then you're going to have the bladder. So there's the bladder. The bladder is going to be a nice muscular sac, and it's expandable. It can hold as much as a liter of urine. But usually we get the signal to urinate way before it ever reaches 1 liter of urine. If your bladder reaches a liter of urine, then there's some issues there. And then the last but not least structure is going to be this urethra. This is the one that varies the most as far as males and females is going to be that urethra. And the main thing it does is just to eliminate the urine from the body. So those structures, this is looking at the posterior view down here at the bottom. That's the one we just labeled. There's some extra labels if you need them. That is what the cadaver picture looks like if you want it as well. But look, these structures right here that all start with U's, ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra, they're going to form the urinary tract. So again, that's basically going to be transport, storage, and elimination of urine. So again, most of this chapter is going to focus on the many functions of the kidneys. So let's take a look at the many functions of the kidneys. One of the big, huge overall functions is the fact that it's going to filter blood, and it is going to turn the blood into something called filtrate, and then eventually it's going to be converted to urine. And urine, and through this whole process, we are able to go in and eliminate those metabolic wastes I mentioned earlier, urea, uric acid, ammonia. But at the same time, it goes in and regulates ion levels like sodium, potassium, and calcium. Really depending on a lot of things like diet, we're able to eliminate sodium and potassium and calcium in the urine. So that's how it's able to regulate the ion levels. Also, we can regulate acid-base balance, so we can make sure that the pH of the blood is going to stay at that 7.35 that it needs to. So it's able to alter blood levels of hydrogen ions and bicarb. Again, through this whole process of regulating whether we're eliminating maybe more hydrogen ions in the urine so we can get it out of the blood, get it into the urine that way. And that's one way that we can regulate acid-base balance. There's other ways that we'll talk about later on. And then even in the next chapter, we'll look at acid-base imbalances and what happens when the whole process is going to kind of go awry. You might remember this right here, regulation of blood pressure from the cardiovascular system. We talked about a lot of different hormones to help regulate blood pressure. We talked about renin, angiotensin II, aldosterone, ADH, ANP. Those all went in and either increased blood pressure or decreased blood pressure by urine volume, either going in and making sure we don't urinate too much or going in and increasing urine volume. So we'll take a look at that a little bit more in this chapter as well. And then, of course, there's biologically active molecules that we eliminate through urine, like some hormones. The hormone HCG, that is going to be a hormone that females eliminate when they're pregnant, and that's what's detected on a pregnancy test. And there's other hormones as well that can be picked up through the urine, or eliminated, I guess I should say eliminated through the urine, or picked up through over-the-counter tests like that. Drugs, if you have to do drug tests for your work and you have to go and urinate in a cup, they're going in and checking some drugs that can be eliminated through urine. So this is that whole process that occurs as filtrate is converted to urine. And this is what the chapter really concentrate on, understandably, is going through and talk about how do we take the blood and turn it into filtrate, which eventually turns into urine, and how they're all going to differ. So let's take a look at some other functions of the kidneys that don't have to do with filtrate or urine or anything like that. And I know you're probably thinking, what in the world is filtrate? We'll introduce filtrate later on. Filtrate is basically what happens once blood is pushed into the kidneys, this little structure. We'll talk about the nephron, and the blood's filtered, and it's going to turn into first something called filtrate. So we'll introduce this and define it later on, so don't worry about it if you don't know that one yet. All right, as far as other functions, this is going to be one of the major functions right here, formation of calcitriol. So look at this. At the very end right here, what happens in the kidneys. Whoop, where did it go? Oh, there it is. All right. So the kidneys are actually going to synthesize the final enzyme in this whole calcitriol formation, which, remember calcitriol, vitamin D, very important in the absorption of calcium from the small intestine. So huge role here as far as calcium absorption. And of course, there's other things that the kidney is going to do with calcium, but here's its role in the formation of calcitriol. Another thing that it is going to be, another important function of the kidneys is the fact that it is going to be where EPO is produced and released. You might remember EPO from the cardiovascular system. You remember this, erythropoietin, that is going to be this hormone that causes the production of red blood cells. So since blood is going into the kidney, it's constantly monitoring levels of chemicals and all of these different substances. One of them is oxygen. It's constantly measuring oxygen levels, and it's making sure that if oxygen levels are too low, then it's going to secrete erythropoietin, and then that is going to go and tell the red bone marrow to kick up the production of red blood cells. So there's the big function there with the cardiovascular system. Look, one last major important function of the kidneys is anytime that we are fasting for long periods of time, or the body is going through starvation, the body's able to go in and maintain glucose levels because, well, one of the kidneys, because of the fact that it can go in and undergo gluconeogenesis. So let's talk about what gluconeogenesis is. We introduced this in the endocrine chapter, but you might have forgotten it, so we can talk about it again, right? Gluco means glucose. And neo means new, and Genesis has to do with the creation. So this is going in and creating brand new glucose. It is producing glucose from non-carbohydrate substances. So think about it. If a person's fasting or starving, where is it going to get non-carbohydrate substances? It's going to go to the muscles, start breaking down muscles and using proteins, amino acids, and converting that to glucose. Or it's going to go to fat, and it's going to break down those triglycerides, and it's going to convert that into glucose. So that's a way to help maintain glucose levels in the body whenever there is prolonged fasting or starvation occurring. So lots of different functions of the kidneys here. So from here on out, it's mainly focusing on the kidneys. Like I said, there's a lot going on here that we have to go through, and how the body goes in and filters, or how the kidneys go in and filter blood, and all of the tiny little things that are going to occur because of it. So we'll go through this. But the next the next section is going to introduce the kidney. We're going to go through the gross anatomy of the kidney. We're going to take a look at the outside. We're going to take a look at the inside, and then go from there. So until next time.